And we're with our Republican Andrews Army Roundtable here in Richmond at the Association of Electric Cooperatives. Aaron Gulbranson is with us. I finally got his name right.
10th time's the
Boyd
charm.
Marcus, 10 times the charm. Boyd Marcus is with us, longtime Republican aficionado and consultant. Was chief of staff, I think, right, for the Governor Gilmore administration, and ran the Bill Bolling campaigns, and he knows how to win in Virginia. Chris Saxman, former House of Delegates member, now commenter on things political. We're kind of waiting for him to jump in the governor's race. Why not? Everybody else is.
No, the question is why?
Why? Don't you jump in the governor's race.
Why?
It's like being a member of Opus Dei. You just have to.
And Andrew Vehorn, who's our host here at the Association of Electric Cooperatives, and here in Richmond, and we call it Andrew's Army because Aaron was charged with coming up with a name, and he failed. So, epic fail, Aaron. So
we could just call the group Aaron's Failure. I mean,
Aaron's epic fail.
Yeah, there you go.
Instead, though, we call it Andrew's Army for lack of a better term. But good to have everybody with us. I want to get, we're going to talk about Republican governor primary, who's going to win, who's in, who's out. We got a new candidate coming in. We got somebody going out. But first, look, I'm going on CNN Friday. They're, by the way, finally having me back so that I can spike the football. But look, here's the thing. I want to talk about this carrier deal, all right? So we've got, and I'm not a free trader, as you guys know. Now we've got, on this carrier deal, we've got these so-called, what I'm going to call them, Petri dish, Puritan, Heritage Foundation, globalist-funded, phony conservatives that are now deriding the deal, saying that it's corporate welfare and it sets a bad precedent and all this nonsense. Look, here's the thing. Tell that to the 1,000 families whose jobs were going away, who had no way to support their family coming in Christmas. Tell them it didn't fit some bogus conservative model that these people come up with and define themselves as purists. Tell them 1,000 families, Chris, that it was a bad deal.
You can't. And that's what drives a lot of decision making anymore. It's politics versus policy, and you can take the broader picture that you described rather brusquely on the globalist versus a nationalist economic policy. But the reality is, for a lot of folks who are looking at these kinds of deals, is okay, if government solved the problem, can't government fix the problem with some incentives to keep carrier in the state of Indiana? They're not federal incentives, they're Indiana incentives. And Boyd was probably saw a lot of these when he was chief of staff to the governor, and look with all the deals Terry McAuliffe's coming up with to bring in companies of various sizes into the Commonwealth, or to keep companies from leaving. It happens every day. That's the reality. It's like you talk about Astros or baseball deals, and we talk about the Redskins moving their stadium. There's going to be a level of interest and a public interest culturally to keep some of these things in your state. Therefore, you have a competitive market in the free market, if you will, between all these governments who want to keep and retain these companies and their jobs. So that becomes a sticking point in public policy.
Look, Aaron, those people that didn't vote for Trump, or the never Trumpers, or these what I call, phony Heritage Foundation, globalist funded conservative types, here's the reality, okay? So you got 1,000 jobs that got saved, right? That's all I know. Somebody was going to be out of a job and their family on the street. Now they have a job. So I think that's a good thing. But where do you think this criticism ends up? I think it really is going to eventually hurt whatever this conservative mantra is that comes out of these things.
Well,
let's say
I think the problem with the criticism is they're criticizing. He said he was going to keep jobs in the United States. This is a big example of it. They're criticizing the man campaigning on this. Now they're criticizing him getting it done. And at the end of the day, it's an America First policy to keep carrier jobs in the United States. So you're criticizing an America First policy. What I think the danger for his critics is, which is fine by me, is that they're going to jump on anything they can criticize, and people are going to start to tune it out after a while, like they did with a lot of presidents. But, this is a guy who's accomplished something pretty major before he's even set foot in the Oval Office.
And it's not just carrier. Ford announced that they're going to keep some factories here. They're not going to move to Mexico. Those are the things that give people in Dickinson County and Buchanan County, in the coal fields of Pennsylvania and Ohio. That's what give those folks hope, because it's not just the 1,000 jobs. Those people put gas in their trucks when they're going to the factory. They stop off and they buy something at the local gas station to eat on their way. They go out for lunch when they're on their lunch shift. You know, it's the ripple effect out into this economy. Those are now 1,000 families that are paying taxes, that can afford to, go to the movies, that can afford to go on vacation, that can spend those dollars and reinvest them in the economy.
And I think the other part about it is damn good politics.
Damn good politics.
And, when you get elected president and you start carrying out your promises and you get things done, that's what people in America are looking for.
Right.
The rhetoric, we've gotten rhetoric from Obama for 8 years. It didn't do much. And I think that, I think it's pretty good. What Chris was saying is right. Look, these are, economic incentives issued by the states are something that is done everywhere. And, it is effectively, if your state doesn't do it, then you are, competing by tying one hand or both hands behind your back. You have to do it. You have to do it in some way. You want to do it responsibly. You want to make sure you're getting, back what you tried, to get back, which is the jobs stay in your state. But I think Donald Trump in this move was brilliant.
Yeah, one of the things that is the tension in politics and policy are the people at the Heritage Foundation level who have a macro view of policy, and they take the free market mantra. And I think at heart, I'm a free trader. However, when you start doing the deals as Donald Trump talked about, then you start putting things into practice, which takes out of view the other laws that are not being considered. So when you talk about your tax policy, your corporate tax rates, and free trade, then you're putting American companies at a competitive disadvantage globally in a global economy. Now, if you can forestall the move by carrier and then go back and solve your inherent problems which are driving companies out, then you have a long-term win that creates not only free trade, fair trade, and better politics and better policy.
Well, I think that's where he's headed with this. And look, the great unifier in America is economic prosperity and jobs, right? Yeah. That's non-ideological. You keep your job and things get better, and then you don't really look at it in a, ideological, philosophical litmus test. But, the other thing, this is why these tweets, I'm such a fan of this, they're so powerful. Right? He sends a tweet out where he makes a speech at the thank you rally, and he says, I'm going to go to Congress and I'm going to ask for a 35% tariff, on any jobs that get shipped out, and then you want to take advantage of the globalist slave trade, cheap labor network, get your manufactured goods made in Mexico or someplace else, and ship them back here. You're going to have to pay a 35% tax. I'm going to get Congress to pass that. So you might want to take that in your pro forma analysis before you take the jobs out. And right away, companies are saying, well, maybe we should rethink this, because there's a fear that Congress is going to pay. Look, if Trump got on TV and went right to the American people, and forget the media, just went right on TV and said, I'm going to Congress. I need a 35% tariff to save our jobs. Call your congressman. What do you think will happen? It'll pass.
Torches and pitchforks. Johnny can do that right on Twitter right
Boom.
now.
Done.
No, it wouldn't pass.
No.
What it does, though, is it starts a conversation that they don't want to have.
You're right, Chris.
And they have to defend a position that is indefensible in the eyes of the political consumer. And that's what he's doing. He's setting them up for a better deal. It's the art of the deal. We've gone from Barry Goldwater's conscience of conservative in the mid-'60s to the art of the deal. It's a very different political dynamic.
And I agree with you 100% with that. 35% tariff isn't going to pass, but something will pass. and that's the whole point. That's what it's weird in a lot of ways, but they had the big blow up at Yale or Harvard, wherever they did the thing.
The Clinton people and
the Clinton people and the Trump folks, and Lewandowski said something which sounded dumb on its face but was real, which is, well, you guys interpreted his words literally. Nobody means this stuff literally. Well, yeah, that's what we do in politics, is we, take what you said and we grab the part of it that we want to beat you over the head with, and we hit you really Donald Trump doesn't literally mean every word he says. I mean, that would make him kind of really weird if he actually literally meant every word. But at the same time, people pretty much understand when he's telling a joke, exaggerating for effect.
They get it.
You're exactly right, Boyd. I mean, what he's saying is there has to be a disincentive for closing American factories and moving them overseas.
Right.
And the easiest way he could quantify that is we've got to put a tariff and make it financially unpopular for these companies to do it. It's the same thing with building the wall and the rhetoric around immigration. What he's saying is we've got to get serious. We've got to look at these problems and find a solution. Here's the easy and obvious way we can do that. Now let's negotiate backwards to somewhere you're more comfortable with.
Right, exactly.
To put it in a sports metaphor for folks, this is called pitching inside.
Yeah.
This is bringing high, hard heat right at your chin. I'm not going to hit you.
Chin music.
Chin music. This is
back
what it's
off the plate.
And if you're looking at the plate, I love your mouse pad. It's a plate of the Astros. One of the great all-time pitchers was Nolan Ryan.
Yeah.
And he threw the ball over.
Inside.
He came inside, but at 100 mios an hour, he came
Well,
inside.
it's pretty. So he backed right off the plate.
Like Pete Rose said to the umpire one day, that sounded like a ball. Right? And sometimes you just got to bring the high, hard heat and push the guy off the plate. And that's what he's doing because it sets you up for successes later in the pitch count and later throughout the game and throughout the season.
You are the champion today, Chris Saxman, of great baseball metaphors, the 3-2 curveball. and I tell you, my son is a 12-year-old left-handed pitcher who's got a really live arm. And that's one of the things we're teaching him now is he's got to get right-handers facing him. They know his ball tails away, so they'll crowd the plate. And we're like, you've got to learn how to go inside. If you're going to pitch in high school, you got to go inside. And you got to get him off that plate.
Nolan Ryan said, my job was to own half the plate. Your job was to figure out which half that was.
That's exactly it. So that's it. It's a chin music high, hard one, no question. All right, got a couple of texts here to read. This is from Corey in Danville, who says, Ken Cuccinelli should have taken that Virginia Supreme Court appointment so he could have afforded to stock a better hospitality suite. Corey in Danville. Thank you, Corey. Also, we wouldn't have to talk to him ever again. That would have been even better. Let's see. This is from Milton in Newport News says, I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on the Al Gore meeting with Donald Trump. I'm sure it had to do with climate change. What are your guys' thoughts? Okay, well, I'll start because it's pretty easy. Donald Trump likes to meet with people. He likes to get information. And don't read into it. I've said this 100 times. Look, Donald Trump's friends, like me, look at what he does and not what he says. His enemies look at what he says and not what he does. That's the big difference. So, Aaron, what's the big deal, right? He met with Al Gore, used to be the vice president, had a lively conversation. So what?
That's exactly right. And Al Gore likes to bloviate and spew hot air. And
Bloviate?
So he can.
He's a bloviator?
He's a bloviator. So he can actually create the global warming problem he says exists.
It was interesting because in I don't know, I think it was like 2005 or something, and I've followed Trump a long time, and he sent out a statement on climate change, and I'm going by memory, 2005, somewhere in there, 4 maybe. And he said, climate change is a hoax perpetrated on the U.S. by the Chinese government in order to make our manufacturing less competitive with the Chinese. And he said this, I think, 2003, 4, or 5, somewhere there. What do you make of the whole thing, Boyd?
Well, I mean, I think that I think talking to Al Gore is probably a waste of anyone's time. But beyond that, I think it's probably again pretty good politics. Donald Trump is leaving people unsure as to where he's going, which leaves him all the options in the world as to where he chooses to go. If people don't, it's when you know what the guy across the table is going to do before he ever opens his mouth. That's when it's a hard to go.
Well, he said he was going to be unpredictable.
He laid out his playbook 30 years ago when he wrote Art of the Deal.
Yep.
Everything from his announcement to what he's doing now makes perfect sense if you read Art of the Deal. It's exactly what you said. Keep people unaware, go in with leverage, go in hard, and then you've got somewhere to comfortable to land.
I think that's all. I think that's it, and I think it goes back to your point. Is I think he absorbs, from what I understand from some folks who worked with him in the private sector in New York that have talked to me about it, is that he absorbs a lot of information from face-to-face meetings and from the all the newspapers and clippings and things like that he reads, and that's the way he likes to get his information.
That's his communication style, and
Yeah.
he's also, if you spend time with him, people don't realize the guy. He's a very social guy. He likes to be around people, and one thing that people don't realize, Chris, is he's got an unbelievable sense of humor. I mean, if you're around the guy, all he does is make fun of stuff and laugh. He's got a great sense of humor. So I think, people just get understanding this is part of his style, right? He doesn't like to read computer stuff. But Warner, I've only got a minute, but Mark, Warner on my show yesterday criticized him for not sitting through intelligence briefings. What do you think of that, Chris?
Well, I think it's something that he needs to build into his communications and show that he's serious, he's paying attention, because that is a weak spot in his swing right now, if you will. I mean, you can't not do that. That's a box you have to check. And when Mark Warner, who's the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, calls you out on it publicly, and you got to step up to the plate, if you will. I keep going back to these baseball analogies,
Yeah, they're good.
but I'm sorry. But in going back to this whole thing with Donald Trump, though, taking in the Al Gore meeting, and if you build in the concept or the reality of you have to take your intelligence briefings, you can only stop following the ball but so much. And he's doing these things with Al Gore to see what the reaction is in the electorate and see what's going on. I mean, you have to pulse your opponents and say what's going on and how do they react. In this time, though, this is basics. You got to do these things. And if Mark Warner, senator from Virginia, calls you out, you should be doing it anyway, but you got to be more consciously aware of it.
I agree with you. I thought on my show yesterday that was a pretty serious, shall we say, suggestion Senator Warner made. We're out of time for this segment. Stay right here. We are going to talk about the Republican side of the 2017 elections. Keep it